See, when you look at the exit poll numbers, they're largely reflective of the difficulty in calling this election, because it has been, there's no overarching dominant issue or a set of issues that that can make it easier to predict. The second thing that makes it very difficult to predict is that the issues of Bangalore, for instance, traffic, building the metro faster or making a better infrastructure and so on, are very Bangalore. It's limited to Bangalore. These are not issues elsewhere in Karnataka.
Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost, and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Our focus remains on Pakistan. More than 24 hours after Imran Khan was arrested by Pakistani Rangers, there's no end to protests across the country. Khan supporters are taking on the army. His lawyers are calling his arrest an abduction. Today, he's been indicted in yet another case. There are more than 100 cases against him. Is this the end game for Imran Khan? Will the protests fizzle out, or will they spread further? Most importantly, what will the army's response be? They've not cracked down hard on the protesters yet. But how long are they prepared to wait and watch? Also, what does an unstable, broke and nuclear-armed Pakistan mean for India and the world? We'll cover all of this and more. Also talking about China's racist attack on India. Government ads in China show Indians with black face and in poor light. We'll talk about China's negative perception of India and how it reflects in their actions against India. Also tracking the elections in Turkey and Thailand. And Trump has been found guilty of sexual assault. Details coming up. The headlines first. Israel renews air attacks on Gaza, trades cross-border fire with militants. This comes just a day after Israeli airstrikes killed 3 militant leaders and 12 others in the enclave. Israeli foreign minister cut short his visit to India in light of the growing tensions. Deadly shooting near Africa's oldest synagogue in Tunisia. A police officer shot dead at least 4 people on the island of Jerba. The gunman was later killed by security forces. It's the first such attack on the synagogue since the 2002 suicide bombing. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad receives an invitation to next week's Arab summit. It will be held in Saudi Arabia on the 19th of May. Syria was expelled from the Arab League after the civil war began in 2011. Last week, it was readmitted. Russian President Vladimir Putin lifts the flight ban with Georgia, also introduces a 90-day visa-free travel for Georgians. In 2019, Russia had banned air travel after anti-Moscow rallies in Georgia. It also fought a brief but bloody war with Georgia in 2008. After a high-voltage campaign, the Indian state of Karnataka votes today. It's the only southern state where Prime Minister Modi's party BJP holds power. The polls come a year ahead of national elections in India. Results will be declared on Saturday. And as China clamps down on dissent, Hong Kong bans foreign lawyers from national security cases. This prevents media tycoon Jimmy Lai from getting foreign counsel. He's a pro-democracy activist. He's been in jail since 2020. We begin with Pakistan. It was never really a stable country, but right now it's the very picture of chaos. And you can imagine why. Imran Khan was arrested yesterday. Since then, there's been carnage. The security situation is deteriorating rapidly. Protests are happening everywhere. We're talking about violent clashes. Mobile internet has been suspended, social media platforms are inaccessible, and several arrests have been made. Nearly 1,000 people have been arrested in Punjab alone. But the public anger is not abating, and Pakistan security forces appear helpless at this point. So far, they failed to contain the rampage. You see, this is more than a political protest. This is a protest against the Pakistani army, and such strong and public show of anger against the army is rare in Pakistan. What happens if it gets out of hand? We'll discuss that in a bit. First, let's tell you about Imran Khan, star cricketer and playboy turned selected prime minister, now accused in more than 120 cases and in jail for openly defying the military that once installed him in power. Imran Khan was supposed to appear in a public court today. That did not happen. The hearing happened at a police station. More of his colleagues were arrested today. The list includes a party secretary. Also, Imran Khan's legal troubles are growing. Today, he was indicted in yet another case, the Tosha Khana case. He's accused of taking state gifts for free and selling them later. He's been indicted for that. Meanwhile, his supporters continue to take on the army. They're openly going after the generals. Yesterday, they stormed this building in Lahore. Do you know what this is? The home of Pakistan's military corps commander. Protesters broke into his house. They destroyed the furniture and other items. A few hours before this, protesters also stormed the army headquarters in Rawalpindi. These were said to be supporters of Imran Khan. They smashed the main gate of the army headquarters and they barged inside. So clearly, the Pakistani army is under attack. What's their response? Well, soft so far. Reports say the soldiers are exercising restraint, though in some cases, the security establishment did use tear gas and water cannons. They're trying to restore order with limited success. Imran Khan has declared war on Pakistan's military, and his supporters blame them for the arrest. Look at what happened yesterday. This is the moment when Imran Khan was arrested. Look closely at your screen now. This is Imran Khan sitting outside the courthouse. When his arrest was ordered, paramilitary troops in riot gear swooped in. Just look at the chaos that followed. And it won't be wrong to say that both sides expected it. The security forces knew there would be chaos. They saw a trailer in March when they tried to arrest Imran Khan. And Khan knew that he would be arrested. He even recorded video messages to this effect before going to court. He's been spoiling for a fight, taking on the army, accusing them of trying to kill him. That's a very serious charge to make. And Imran Khan has been saying this for a while now. He doesn't name names, but in his most recent statement, he claimed that a senior military officer had tried to kill him.
निकलने से पहले दो बातें करना चाहता हूँ। सबसे पहले ISPR ने बयान दिया है कि इदारे की तौहीन कर दी, फौज की तौहीन कर दी, कि एक ऑफिसर का नाम ले दिया इंटेलिजेंस ऑफिसर का, जिसने 2 दफा मुझे कत्ल करने की कोशिश की।
The officer tried to kill me twice. That's the allegation from Imran Khan. The army's response? They call the allegations, quote unquote, irresponsible and baseless. And they seem to have lost patience with Imran Khan. 5 years back, they selected him to be prime minister. Now they want him gone. But he's not going without a fight. His supporters are protesting and his lawyers are calling the arrest an abduction.
The first thing is that the arrest of Imran Khan is not an arrest, but a state abduction. That is number one. The second thing is that the way he was arrested shows there is no constitution in Pakistan at the moment. There is an undeclared type of civilian martial law, and a kind of emergency is there at the moment in Pakistan.
Imran Khan's party is calling for bigger protests. They want more people to hit the streets. Listen to this.
When they saw the most popular leader in the country being dragged by Islamabad police, there was a reaction all over the country. From Karachi to Khyber, people are out in the streets, they are protesting, and they will continue to protest.
The world is watching the chaos in Pakistan and reactions have begun pouring in. The US, the UK and Canada, they've all issued travel advisories. The US Embassy in Islamabad cancelled consular appointments. The UK wants British citizens in Pakistan to avoid any area with large crowds. And Canada too is advising caution. The foreign ministers of the US and the UK have issued statements too. Listen to this.
We just want to make sure that whatever happens in Pakistan is consistent with the rule of law, with the Constitution.
We want to see peaceful democracy in that country. We want to see the rule of law adhered to.
The world is worried about the situation in Pakistan, and for good reason. This is a nuclear-armed state descending into anarchy. You've seen the pictures from Pakistan, you've heard the leaders. The question is, what happens next? And the answer depends on the army. I know yesterday's arrest was technically done by the government, but this isn't Shehbaz Sharif's doing. This is the Pakistan Army's grand plan. They tolerated Imran Khan for most of 2022, but this weekend he crossed a line. He accused the ISI of plotting his assassination. Days later, he's in jail. So what happens next will also depend on the army. And the army has been patient so far. Protesters broke into the Lahore Corps commander's house yesterday, as we showed you. No blowback yet. They also stormed the army headquarters in Rawalpindi, but again, no blowback. So looks like the army is playing the waiting game. They're hoping that Imran Khan supporters will gradually leave. But what if they don't? And that's a real possibility too. Imran Khan is not on the ground controlling his supporters. His fellow PTI leaders are missing too. We've seen them giving passionate speeches on social media, but on the streets, no one is actually protesting. It's the heat, I guess. They're too used to lounging around in air-conditioned boardrooms. Either way, the lack of leadership is an issue. With no direction, the protests could spiral out of control, or worse, radical elements could hijack it, which is why the army's role becomes very important. They clearly want Imran Khan out of the upcoming election, so chances are a conviction is coming. If Imran Khan is found guilty, he cannot contest. That seems to be the end game here. But elections are still 3 months away. The next 3 days could be more crucial. A full-blown crackdown could backfire on the army, and I can give you 2 reasons why. Number one, it would collapse the economy. The internet shutdowns and the road blockages will hurt businesses, and that's something that Pakistan cannot afford. Also, the IMF will be watching closely. Bailouts and crackdowns do not exactly go hand in hand. Reason number 2, the army's involvement would vindicate Imran Khan. It would boost his popularity even further. So wait and watch seems to be Rawalpindi's strategy. Of course, if the protests turn violent, all bets are off, which brings us to that horrible scenario. What happens if there is absolute chaos? We're talking about a nuclear-armed state here, politically unstable, economically sinking, and morally bankrupt. It's not good news for India. It could mean more cross-border terrorism, a more active line of control, more trouble in Afghanistan, basically more instability in the region, and the nuclear arsenal remains a big worry. It's controlled by the army, not the government. If those nukes fall into the wrong hands, anything could happen. Of course, that's the worst-case scenario. In general, an unstable Pakistan is a hostile Pakistan. More terror camps may pop up near the border. Extremist groups may hijack bilateral policy. All of these are real risks. Usually, crises can bring people together. It's a great chance to reconnect, to maybe bury the old hatchets. But with India and Pakistan, that seems unlikely. I'll tell you why. In September last year, Pakistan was devastated by floods. Reports said India was open to sending aid. But guess what Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif did then? He went to New York for the UN General Assembly. And what did he talk about? Kashmir. And this has been Pakistan's consistent policy. When the going gets tough, distract the people. And their favorite distraction is India. But this crisis will push Pakistan closer to another country, and that country is China. IMF bailout or not, that's already happening. Beijing holds 23% of Pakistan's external debt. If things get worse, China will leverage that, or rather, weaponize that. New Delhi must be ready for all these possibilities. It's the unfortunate reality of our region. As they say, a good neighbor is a boon, a bad one can make your life miserable. That's what Pakistan is right now, has been for a while. A near-failed state on India's doorsteps. And when it comes to neighbors, India has been particularly unlucky. If Pakistan is a ticking time bomb, China is a source of perpetual provocation. Let me show you the latest example. A racist social media trend targeting India. Look at this. These are posts from Weibo, from an official account of the Chinese government. These posts mock India. There are male characters in turbans portrayed in blackface. The women are white. They've posted videos too. They ridicule Indian movies. This is in very poor taste and blatantly racist. And let me repeat, it comes from the Chinese government. Which part of the government? China's Ministry of Public Security. It's the principal police authority in China. And what are these clips about? Road safety, apparently. The government of China has launched a campaign teaching citizens about road safety rules. How? By insulting Indians, by demeaning Indian culture. You know what this shows? This is how the Chinese state sees India and Indians. And the comments and reactions to these videos betray Chinese racism. Let me show you one comment by a Chinese Weibo user. I'm quoting. Only the men in the video wore blackface because Indian men are regarded as clowns in China, but Indian women are regarded as beauties. I'm not making any of this up. Also, this is not new. China's disdain for India. Multiple researchers have documented it. The Chinese have a predominantly negative perception of India. They call India the yellow sick man, and they see India as a troublemaker. Recently, when India overtook China as the world's most populous country, do you know what the Chinese response was? The official Chinese response. They said quality is more important than quantity. It shows that China sees India as an inferior nation and its population as second rate. These racist videos are a manifestation of that same mindset. Why should we care? Because China's superiority complex reflects in its actions too. It sees itself as a great power, the so-called middle kingdom between heaven and earth, and it sees India as a junior player. So China tries to contain India by border incursions in the Himalayas and provocations on the high seas. I'll give you the latest example. India and ASEAN nations held maritime drills. This was a week-long exercise involving 9 ships, 6 aircraft, and more than 1,800 personnel. The drills happened in the South China Sea. Guess who else was in these waters? Chinese militia. Their boats and vessels were spotted in the same area about 100 nautical miles away from where the drills were happening. Reports say Indian officials were monitoring the situation. They were tracking the movements of at least 5 militia boats. Do these boats belong to the PLA? Well, China says they don't. It issued a statement today calling the accusations quote-unquote groundless. But the facts speak for themselves. These vessels have a clear connection to Beijing, and China has a history of gunboat diplomacy. There are hundreds of such ships and boats in South China Sea. What purpose do they serve? They exercise Chinese control over disputed territories. The boats that showed up near the Indian drills belong to a specific fleet, a fleet called the Cheong Sansha Yu Militia. And this name gives away many details. Cheong means the ships fall under the jurisdiction of the Hainan province in China. Sansha conveys that they belong to Sansha, which is a city in Hainan. And finally, Yu means that these are fishing vessels, although they do more than fishing. In fact, let me take you back to a report from 2016. It was published by China Defense News, a media outlet run by the PLA. The report indicated that there is a garrison in Sansha, the city I just talked about. It hosts bases for the militia force. Trainings are conducted here. What kind of trainings? Members of the militia force are trained in navigation, communication, the use of weapons, even surveillance. And by deploying such militia, China maintains plausible deniability. It uses force at sea without taking responsibility. The 20th century had oil. The 21st century has chips, what we call semi-conductors. They're everywhere, in our phones, in our cars, in our appliances, even in our weapons. Modern life is simply not possible without chips. But like oil, not every country makes chips. In 2021, India tried to enter this market. The government announced an incentive program to attract investors. How much money are we talking about? $10 billion. But the program had a drawback. Companies only had 45 days to apply. If they did not make the deadline, they wouldn't be eligible. The result? There was only limited success. So now the government is reopening that program, this time with a tweak. The 45-day window has been removed. Companies can keep applying until the $10 billion are used up. Technicalities aside, what does this move signal? That the government is keen on chips. It wants to insert India into the global chip supply chain. And what does that look like? Well, you can divide the chip market into three parts: designing, manufacturing, and assembling. This process is not centralized. It's spread across the world. Virtually all of the chip designing is done in the United States. These designs are then manufactured elsewhere. Taiwan, for instance, is a top producer. It makes up around 50% of the market. South Korea is second with 17%. Japan is third. China is fourth. The final step is assembling these chips. In simple words, putting them inside devices. And this is where China is miles ahead. They have more factories, so they assemble more devices. But that's not where the real money is. If you want the big bucks, you must either design or manufacture. That's where the skill is, and by extension, that's where the money is. So how big is this chip market? Around $570 billion today. By the end of this decade, around $1 trillion, and I would say that's a conservative estimate. So the potential is immense, which is why every country is rushing to capitalize. It's the new gold rush. But where does India feature in this race? In 2021, the government was very ambitious. It was expecting at least a dozen chip factories by 2024. Safe to say that's not happening. But one major deal has been signed. Taiwan's Foxconn and Vedanta are setting up a plant in Gujarat. The project is worth $19.5 billion. It's a good start, we say. But the key is to build on it. As of now, India's chip market is worth around $27 billion. By 2026, it could be $55 billion. So the industry is expected to double in the next 3 years. Some factors do work in India's favor. Number one, abundance of skilled and affordable labor. That is key to dominating the chip industry, especially when it comes to designing and assembly. Number two, the political climate. You see, most countries are concerned about Taiwan's dominance in chip making. If China invades, that market would collapse. So there is a global push to diversify, and India benefits from that. The US has already offered support for India's chip industry. In March, both sides signed a memorandum of understanding. It talks about supply chains and partnerships. The Quad also announced a supply chain project. It was unveiled in 2021. It hasn't really moved forward. Factor number three that adds to India's advantage: India's local demand. We're talking about the most populous economy in the world. So a lot of these chips and devices will be consumed locally. Those are the advantages. But there are challenges too. The biggest challenge is China, of course. Beijing also dreams of dominating the global chip market. They have a head start. They also have a bigger checkbook. China's chip market is worth around $192 billion, which is 7 times the Indian market. They're also readying a new package. It's worth around $143 billion. My point is, China will always outspend India. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is the nature of the market. It's almost like a cartel. Hard to enter, even harder to leave. If India signs on, it could become stuck in a US-dominated grouping, and that could mean a lot of conditions, like labor standards, green targets, anti-corruption measures. India has always preferred setting these itself. So will it be comfortable inside a chip cartel? Well, that's a question for the government to think about. Either way, one thing is clear: sitting on the sidelines is not an option. If it's not possible to match China's spending, then New Delhi must focus on other strategies, like creating chip alliances or leveraging its ties with the US and Japan. It must also think about what role it wants to play in this market. Reports say the government is keen on manufacturing, but that's a tough sell. You see, making chips is all about staying ahead of the curve. At the top, you have cutting edge. At the bottom, you have trailing edge. Taiwan and South Korea closely guard the cutting-edge technology. So should India invest time and money in manufacturing? Or should it focus on designing? All of these questions will be key to India's chip project. We'll be watching. Vantage continues after a short break.
Because it's got to be the Congress party. But this is another second pollster who's actually giving BJP the mandate and not the Congress. So does this change the average? 10 seats more than the last time for the Congress party in this one. Lavanya Balal, any thoughts quickly on the numbers that have come in so far?
No, some of these numbers are so not correct. It's incorrect. The numbers are incorrect. And I would like to point out, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji visited Bangalore, it solidified the BJP vote base. But then the neutral voters got really annoyed with the kind of restrictions that it put on average Bangalorean. Bangaloreans hate the traffic jams, and that intensified because of Modi ji's visit. And also, it reinforced Modi ji's opinion that Kannadigas have, that he does not care about the state for the rest of the 5 years. He visited 10 times only during the election, went back complaining about our tigers, but he didn't visit the state during the floods, during COVID, or any other season.
Lavanya,
You know, so
what about that open letter that the Prime Minister wrote, where he talked about the role of Karnataka in the $5 trillion economy, that when India becomes the third largest economy, then Karnataka will play an important role. So, you know, while, yes, the elections were being fought on polarizing issues because of the issue that was given to the BJP, I would say, on a platter with by Mr. Kharge, and also in your party manifesto, the fact is that it finally became about development. It was about the plan, the roadmap.
Maria, Karnataka is already the second biggest GST payer in the taxpayer in the country.
Yes.
They are already a big player when it comes to economy of this nation. But what is the amount of GST that we get in return? It's pittance that we get back. Do you know how difficult it is for Karnataka to demand our own well-deserved GST monies back?
RP Singh, a response on that, please. Go ahead.
Well, she's forgetting on one thing. Karnataka got 38 lakh toilets. It got 1 crore 1 lakh tap water.
It's election time in Turkey. Many are calling it the toughest test for Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He's ruled for 2 decades now. He has single-handedly changed Turkey's DNA. It was a progressive, secular country. Now it's more orthodox and Islamist. Erdogan has survived many challenges in the past, even survived a coup attempt in 2016. But this time, the challenge is different. The economy is bad, the global outlook is gloomy, and Western allies are fed up with him. So the opposition has sensed a chance. They think there is a genuine possibility of unseating him. We'll get to the political battle. But first, the basic facts. There are 2 candidates you should know about. One is obviously Erdogan. The other is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He's a combined opposition candidate. 6 parties in the opposition have come together and they've nominated this man. The voting will happen on the 14th of May. If any candidate gets more than 50% votes, then the job is done. He will become the next president of Turkey. If not, there will be a second round. Around 64 million people are registered to vote. 3.4 million of them live abroad. They too can vote for the president. The opinion polls are predicting a second round. But most of them show Erdogan trailing. His biggest challenge seems to be the economy. Inflation is at 44%, and Erdogan's policies have made it worse. Instead of raising interest rates, he lowered them. Why? Because Islamic law prohibits interest. As a result, the national currency collapsed. The lira lost 44% of its value in 2021. 2 years later, it is yet to recover. Then in February, a devastating earthquake struck Turkey. The losses ran up to $84 billion. That's almost 10% of the country's GDP. So the people of Turkey have suffered a lot. And they're hoping this man can turn it around. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, think about everything you know about Erdogan. Now flip it. You get Kılıçdaroğlu. They're simply worlds apart. Erdogan is a career politician. Kılıçdaroğlu is a career bureaucrat. Erdogan is an Islamist. Kılıçdaroğlu is a staunch secularist. Erdogan is hard on the West. Kılıçdaroğlu is pro-West. So the result of this election will have massive consequences, not just for Turkey, but also for the rest of the world. If Erdogan loses, the country could go back to having a parliament. You see, Turkey became a presidential country in 2017. Before that, it had a parliament. It also had a prime minister. The opposition wants to bring that back. They're also committed to joining the European Union. Kılıçdaroğlu is promising, quote-unquote, true democracy in Turkey. But knowing Erdogan, it won't be easy. He's trying to campaign on his terms. not the opposition's. Recently, he called the opposition gay. I know it sounds crass, but there is a political message there. Erdogan is trying to rally his orthodox base. He wants to depict Kılıçdaroğlu as pro-LGBTQ, and that's not all. On Tuesday, he increased the salary of government workers by 45%. Not suspicious at all. These tactics betray Erdogan's fears. He knows there's a genuine possibility that he may lose. And what happens then? Will Erdogan peacefully hand over power? He's ruled this country since 2002. He's tamed the army, the state media, and most government organs. So we can't rule out a power struggle. How should India see this high-stakes contest? Well, Erdogan certainly has not been India's friend. He has peddled Pakistan's narrative on Kashmir. He even raised it in United Nations platforms. But will Kılıçdaroğlu be any different? He hasn't spelled out his India policy yet. But we can be sure of one thing. It can't possibly be worse than Erdogan's. If the opposition wins this weekend, it would change global strategic alliances. Russia would lose a key partner in Eurasia, NATO would get back its shaky ally, and Europe would find a friendly regime at its border. We'll be tracking these results closely. Now let's turn our attention to another demagogue, Donald Trump, former US president, now found guilty of sexual abuse. The case was filed by journalist E. Jean Carroll. She said Donald Trump raped her in 1996. Now the jury has found that he sexually abused her. Not the same as rape, but a significant verdict nonetheless. Trump has been asked to pay Carroll $5 million in damages, and this is a civil case, so he won't go to jail. But it's quite an indictment. Although Trump has called it a witch hunt and a disgrace. The question is, how will it impact his presidential bid? He wants to run for president in the 2024 election. Being found guilty of sexual abuse may not help. But then again, this is America, so we can't be sure of what will happen. Also, Trump tends to benefit from such episodes. You may remember what happened in the month of March. He became the first former US president to be indicted in a criminal case. This was about a porn star. Her name is Stormy Daniels. Trump paid her money to keep her quiet. They call it hush money. He made the payment, but did not show it in his books. So he was indicted. Now he's been found guilty of sexual abuse. Of course, he's denied all the charges. Throughout these cases, in fact, his demeanor was typical Trump, full of vitriol. Let me show you something from his deposition in October last year. It's just been made public. Take a look at this.
I still don't know this woman. I think she's a whack job. I have no idea. I don't know anything about this woman other than what I read in stories and what I hear. I know nothing about her, but I know nothing about her. I think she's sick, mentally sick. She said that I did something to her that never took place. There was no anything. I know nothing about this nut job.
He called her a whack job, nut job, and mentally sick. Charming. Of course, this isn't the first time that Trump has been found being vulgar while describing women. There was a famous Access Hollywood tape that went viral before the 2016 presidential election. Trump was in a bus talking about his disgusting acts. That tape did not stop him from becoming the president of the US. But it may have helped nail him in this rape trial. He was questioned about it, and his answer was distasteful, to say the least.
I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the pussy?
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
Fortunately, really. As you can imagine, the jury unanimously declared Trump guilty of sexual abuse. But that isn't the end of the sordid saga. Trump, of course, is going to appeal.
Yeah, I mean, look, strange verdict. This was a rape claim. It was a rape case all along, and the jury rejected that, but made other findings. So we'll obviously be appealing those other findings. And at the end of the day, while, you know, it was strange, part of me was obviously very happy that Donald Trump was not branded a rapist. I didn't think there should be any liability findings, so we'll pursue it. We'll pursue that.
He says he's happy Trump wasn't branded a rapist. So sexual abuser is a badge of honor? The sick part is that it might be for his voter base. Trump's Access Hollywood tape was actually lauded by some of his supporters. They've dismissed his Stormy Daniels hush money case as politically motivated, and most likely this one too will be defended by his rabid fan base. After the verdict, Donald Trump put out this statement on his social media platform. It's called Truth Social. He set it up after being removed from Twitter. Trump says the judge in this case was biased. He says the venue of the trial was completely partisan and that it was the greatest political witch hunt of all time. What Donald Trump did not mention is that he was found guilty by the jury, a jury made up of ordinary people. Will American voters see past the sea of excuses next year? Trump probably believes so. He's shown no indication that he'll step out of the presidential race. Our next story is about the Islamic State, a jihadist group of terrorists infamous for beheadings, mass killings and abductions. The ISIS has found a new target, and that is Russia. But why Russia? And how is the ISIS targeting Russia? Well, not with weapons yet. For now, they're using propaganda tools. The ISIS has launched a media campaign in their weekly newsletter. Yes, they have one. And this campaign slams Russia on the war in Ukraine. Again, the question is why? Our next report has the answers.
The ISIS is now targeting Russia, but not in the way you would imagine. They're targeting Russia with propaganda tools. Simply put, a media campaign. And it all started with the Islamic State's weekly newsletter. It's called Al-Naba, and it came into action shortly after the war in Ukraine began. ISIS calls Russia an orthodox crusader. One article in the newsletter even made an appeal to God, asking for Russia's wars to be bloody. The media campaign says the war is Russia's punishment, wrath of the gods. Against what? Apparently, escalation of the competition between Russia and America, because they want to take control of Eastern European countries. Now, Al-Naba seems to have moved on from this. But other pro-ISIS media groups have really clung to it. They have continued the discussion. But the question is, why is ISIS targeting Russia this way? Now, Russia may be a new target for the terrorist group, but it's a familiar enemy. ISIS hasn't forgotten about the Soviet-Afghan war. It was a decade-long war with a bloody legacy. So there's historical hatred. But the anger is not reserved for the past. It also stems from more recent events, like the Syrian civil war. It was a drawn-out bloody war during which Russia assisted Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. It provided air support that targeted areas with a Sunni stronghold, not easily forgivable for the ISIS. Then there's Russia's relations with the Taliban, which they've worked on for years now. Russia wants to establish contact with the Taliban. It's been lobbying with them. Reports say Russia wants to gain access to Afghanistan. And why would the Taliban help them? For international support. All in all, Russia seems like a worthy enemy for ISIS, a good enough target to be fought with propaganda. But why is ISIS going after Russia now? Maybe we should look at the timing. The war in Ukraine has dragged on longer than Russia expected. It's possible that the ISIS wants to test Russia's strength. But how is this media offensive going to help the ISIS? This is all speculation. It could be that ISIS wants to incite Muslims. Maybe highlighting these socio-political problems will attract supporters. They want to show Russia as the enemy of Islam. And for now, these actions may seem harmless, but this propaganda clearly does not lack a goal. And if anything, it could be a warning, a declaration of intent to go after Russia. There is a message here for other countries too. There's a power vacuum in Afghanistan since the US left. Countries like Russia, Iran and China have been trying to fill it. But if they do, they might have to face the anger of ISIS.
Now let's look at what's happening in Thailand. We told you yesterday about the upcoming election. Today we'll focus on a major issue that's dividing Thai voters: marijuana. That's right, political parties are sparring over the future of weed in Thailand. They legalized marijuana last year. Well, sort of. The government made a technical move. It removed cannabis from Thailand's narcotics list. So it's technically not illegal anymore. But there are no ground rules on growing and consuming weed. Before the government could work on those, it was disbanded for the election. And this regulatory vacuum has triggered a debate. How should weed be handled in Thailand? That's what political parties can't agree on. And believe it or not, it has become a major election issue in the country. Here's a report.
Thailand is going to polls on Sunday. It's a tough election for the military junta and Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. A lot of Thai people are sick of their economic mismanagement. However, one issue may work out in their favor: marijuana. Yes, believe it or not, Thailand's marijuana legalization may benefit the military. Here's how. Last year, Thailand removed cannabis from its narcotics list. It was done by the ruling coalition under General-turned-PM Chan-o-cha. His coalition included local parties from regions in Thailand that grow cannabis, so cannabis was no longer illegal. But there were no real laws surrounding its cultivation and sale. No one was sure what was allowed and what wasn't, and to no one's surprise, people took advantage of the legal grey area. Marijuana dispensaries started cropping up everywhere, both medical and otherwise. People were selling joints, edibles, and everything in between. Tourists were flocking to Thailand like never before. But there's always a dark side, like children having easy access to marijuana. Cops shaking down tourists who didn't know they couldn't smoke weed in public. It was bedlam. It still is. And people want to know what's allowed and what's not.
I think they should be more clear about the rules about weed, cannabis, and how people can smoke inside or not. Just make more clear about the rules. Because right now it's like 50-50 about everything. So
the government was going to pass legislation to regulate cannabis this year, but they faced resistance in Parliament. Eventually, the government's term lapsed ahead of the upcoming polls. It was disbanded before it could pass marijuana regulation laws. So the next government will have to take care of it, and Thailand's political parties are in a fix. Despite its reputation as a tourism hub, Thailand, especially rural Thailand, is a conservative place. There has been public outrage over images of stoned children. Some sections of people are afraid of what legalizing cannabis will do to Thai society. Of course, there are voices on the opposite side of the fence, like farmers who grow marijuana. Many believe that the crop is their cash cow. They're backing their local parties who have promised to make weed legal and expand the industry. At the national level, the biggest parties are in a bind. Both of the parties leading in polls are courting the youth vote. These are the Pure Thai Party and the Move Forward Party. They've projected themselves to be the change makers. Move Forward in particular is fueled by young, hopeful voters. But both the PTP and Move Forward have said legalization happened too soon, that it needs to be reined in. And this has spooked some voters.
I think one of the reasons that people doesn't actually invest in cannabis right now, or they didn't put that much effort in cannabis, is that they're not certain that the industry is going to stay for long, right? So they're not going to invest millions in something that, say, if we have next elections, we're gonna go back into having all this into something illegal again. So people don't invest.
Ironically, in this debate, it's the largest military-backed parties that are seen as progressive. That's mostly because they've maintained a studied silence on the topic of cannabis. The studied silence, plus the fact that they were in power when weed was legalized, Thailand's junta might capture some of the rebellious youth vote.
For our last story tonight, let's talk about parenting. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but thanks to medical science now, it can also take the DNA of 3 parents to have one. That's right, DNA from 3 individuals to produce one baby. And the procedure can be life-saving. We're talking about 3 parent babies. It is a real thing. And the UK just got its first such baby, although it's not a new phenomenon. The first 3 parent baby was born in the year 2016. And since then, many more have been brought to life. This only goes on to show how far science has come. But the procedure is not without risks. Here's a report.
Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. How many times did you learn that in school? The effort that went into learning it is inversely proportional to the use of this knowledge. After all, mitochondria facts aren't really a party starter. But for this story, they will come in handy. Because we're going to talk about 3 parent babies. You heard that right. Not 1, not 2, but 3 parent babies. Here's how. Babies, like all organisms, are made of DNA, and the DNA of children comes from their parents. So, with 3 parent babies, the process is the same. Except instead of 2, 3 parents give their DNA. The father who gives the sperm, the mother who gives the egg, and a female donor. So what does this female donor give? Her DNA. Then a baby will be born like in any IVF birth. That's in vitro fertilization, where the embryo forms outside the womb in a lap dish, and then is placed inside the womb of the mother. And this process is called mitochondrial donation treatment. But you may wonder, if the mother is already offering an egg, why is another woman's DNA required? And why only a woman donor? This is where mitochondria come in. What's that, you ask? Mitochondria are like tiny compartments. They're inside nearly every cell of our body. They convert food into usable energy, at least the decent ones. But sometimes they malfunction. And the defective mitochondria are really bad for the body. They not only fail to give us energy, but can cause brain damage, heart failure, blindness, and muscle wasting. These diseases are incurable and genetic, so they pass on to children. About 1 in 6,000 babies are born with mitochondrial diseases every year. And it's fatal to them, most dying within hours of their birth. So families have lost multiple children to this. So obviously, parents want to protect their babies from this. And for them, this method is the only solution. People inherit all their mitochondria from a woman, and that's why they need the genes of a 3rd female donor, even if only 0.1% of the baby's genes come from her. Because this brings in the donor's healthy mitochondria, not the faulty ones, and a healthy baby is born. Which is exactly what's happened in the UK. For the first time in history, a 3-parent baby has been born. But this isn't the first such case in the world. In 2016, a 3-parent baby was born in Mexico. In 2017, another was born to parents in Ukraine. And in 2019, a similar case was seen in Greece. So the science is clearly picking up across the world, but at a slow pace, because it isn't without risks. This technique is fairly new. There are health concerns, which is why it's banned in countries like America and Canada. Then there are ethical and moral concerns because it's tweaking natural biology. In a few cases, the process is unsuccessful too. But while the concerns are valid, there are also the consequences of not making use of this technique. Because for thousands of families, this is their only hope. What we need is balance. How to achieve it is the challenge. So, Three's company or crowd, the choice is yours.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Ukraine. The country's armed forces have released a new video. It shows multiple rocket launch systems firing near the city of Bakhmut. The battle in the city has been going on for months now. In the US, a car smashed into a restaurant and drove away. The driver later surrendered. And the ocean race is still going on, but the mast of one of the competing boats broke due to storms. And finally, what makes the 10th of May significant? Taking you back in history, on this day, India's first war of independence began. The year was 1857. About 2/3 of the country was under the rule of the East India Company. The remaining regions were princely states, and they too were losing their autonomy to the British. What really ignited this war of independence was the introduction of a new Enfield rifle into the military. The cartridges had to be bitten off before the rifles could be loaded. They were apparently smeared with the fat of pigs and cows. This triggered both Hindu and Muslim fighters. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.
And there they go.
The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.
That when India becomes the third largest economy, then Karnataka will play an important role. So, you know, while, yes, the elections were being fought on polarizing issues because of the issue that was given to the BJP, I would say, on a platter with by Mr. Kharge and also in your party manifesto, the fact is that it finally became about development. It was about the plan, the roadmap.
Maria, Karnataka is already the second biggest GST payer in the taxpayer in the country.
Yes.
They are already a big player when it comes to economy of this nation. But what is the amount of GST that we get in return? It's pittance that we get back. Do you know how difficult it is for Karnataka to demand our own well-deserved GST monies back?
RP Singh, a response on that, please. Go ahead.
Mr. Shivkumar, most exit polls seem to suggest that the Congress will either cross the halfway mark or be very close to it. Are you satisfied with whatever you've heard from your party workers, booth workers, that the Congress is in a position, if not to emerge as the single largest party, at least to get outright majority?
I don't go by even your surveys. They might have shown that in every survey, Congress will be leading. It is not, Congress will not lead. It will have an absolute majority. That is the numbers. Without any support, we will form a government and we stand by it.
What basis are you saying this? What gives you confidence?
See, I am a ground man. I know my political arithmetics. I know the social engineering, what we have done. I know what the problem the state has faced. I know how the old Mysore has been improved, how the Kittur Karnataka has been improved. So there are big numbers in it. So I think that will make a very big change, and I think we will have 60 seats extra than what seats we had.
You have made
we'll touch 141 seats, 100 plus.
Okay.
You have made an interesting point about social engineering, DK Shivkumarji. Tell us about the social engineering that the Congress did, and when did this entire strategy begin?
See, you saw the number of seats we have given to Lingais, the number of seats we picked up with the OBC section, and what we gave to the left and right. That's all makes a lot of change in it. And we have taken the section which were not with us, we have somehow tried to convince them, and they also convinced that BJP could not give them a government which they wanted. So including all Matadipatis thought that this government took commission even from them. All PWD contractors, all government officials. These are the part of social life. And every section of the society felt that they have been cheated and every pickpocketed. They said that they are going to double the income of every common man, including the farmer. Where the farmer got? Farmer is suffering, everyone is suffering. At the time of COVID, Prime Minister asked to do bhajan, asked to do lit the lamp, all these things. But ultimately nothing happened, no.
Old
Scams
Mysuru
after
region?
scams, corruption after corruption.
Sir, old Mysuru region, was it a fight
Mysuru
between you
region-
and the JDS? What made you, what
Yes,
is
it
giving
was
you
we
confidence
and
in
the
that
JDS.
area?
The old Mysore area will have 25 seats, I'm telling you. 25 seats in the old Mysore region. That number will add more to us.
DK Shivkumar ji, namaskara. This is Anand Narsimhan
In
here.
Mysore,
One of the key aspects,
Yes.
sir, I know you have very strong political ambitions and you've been waiting in the wings for a while. But one of the aspects is how much of the votes can you bring in, especially from the Vocaliga votes? 51 seats. Are you confident that you'll be able to bring in a
The
bulk and
number you
also
see,
stake
if
very
you-
strong claims, sir?
more than 25 seats Congress party will win in this old Mysore area. This is my number.
Which is the area where the Congress will make the biggest gains? To go from 80 seats to about 120 seats, it's a big jump. Where do you see the maximum gains? Where are you going to hurt the BJP the most?
No. I'm telling you my number will be 141.
Where is the number coming from?
More than 10 seats we are adding in Kalyan, Karnataka. 15 seats we are adding in Mumbai, Karnataka, Kittur, Karnataka. Rest in the old Mysore and the central Karnataka.
Mr.
Mr.
Shivkumar,
Yes.
I know, I think the
Especially
million
in
dollar
Davao-
question.
Especially in the
The
in
million dollar
Davangere and
question.
Chittorgarh,
Yeah.
we had only 3 seats. We will have more than 10 seats there.
Okay, the million dollar question everyone wants to ask you is, if the Congress party is in a position to form government, who is going to be chief minister?
Why you are worried about the chief minister?
Are you not
Please
worried about
worry
the chief minister?
Why you worry about the chief minister? I am not worried about the chief minister. I am not worried about the
Sir,
chief minister.
if you
I am
are
worried
saying
about-
that the numbers in old Mysuru will be coming as a huge surprise, then you will have a better claim at the chief minister's chair. That would be because of you. You will take the credit for it, I'm sure.
that already credit goes to every worker of the state. It is not me. I am not an individual. Anyone, I am not an individual. It is every worker, every leader of my party has done. I may be the team leader, that's all. The credit go to every congressman of this state.
But as PCC chief, won't you want that you should get your due, sir? Do you think you will get your due if Congress wins heavily and handsomely?
We will discuss my due on May 15th.
Okay, sir.
Sir,
It will
before
be
I
my
let you go,
birthday.
DK Shivkumar ji, before I let you go, as KPCC chief, you started campaigning 2 years in advance. You are almost seen as a leader who established the party in several pockets where the Congress was weak. Would you say that if the Congress holds these numbers hold,